The first thing I noticed was the sound of pickleballs at 6:47 a.m. Not tennis balls, not the soft, rhythmic thump of a well-struck serve echoing off the old clay. This was a sharp plastic crack, dozens of them, overlapping like a hailstorm on a tin roof. I stood at my kitchen window with a cup of coffee cooling against my palm and watched strangers in matching visors swarm across a court I had known since I was 9 years old. My court. The one my father taught me to play on. The one with the cracked baseline where I learned to slide into a backhand. The one that had sat quiet and overgrown for 7 years behind the old Fairview Sports Club building, waiting for someone to care about it again. Apparently, someone had decided to care. Her name was Patricia Calloway, and she was standing at the net with a clipboard pressed against her chest, like a shield, directing traffic as if she had built the place with her own hands. She wore a white polo with the HOA logo embroidered on the left sleeve, and her visor was the same shade of electric lime as the new pickleball lines painted across my clay. I set my coffee down. I pulled on my boots. I walked outside. The morning air was already thick with August heat, and the smell of fresh acrylic paint cut through the pine trees that lined the back of the property. Someone had mowed the grass around the court. Someone had trimmed the hedges. Someone had installed a portable net system and 4 folding chairs near the baseline. A banner hung between 2 metal poles read, "Fairview Estates Pickleball Club. Founding member registration open." Patricia saw me coming before I reached the gate. She smiled the way people smile when they have already decided you are not a problem. "Good morning," she called out. "We're just getting started. Are you here to sign up?" I stopped at the gate. The chain was gone. The padlock my father had installed in 1994 was lying in the grass beside a pair of bolt cutters. "I'm here to find out who cut my lock," I said. Patricia's smile tightened by about 10%. The board authorized cleanup of the old club courts. "This area has been an eyesore for years. We're turning it into a community amenity." "This area is my property," I said. She tilted her head. "The court has always been part of the Fairview Sports Club parcel. The HOA absorbed that parcel 2 years ago when the club dissolved." "The club didn't dissolve," I said. "The club's lease expired." Patricia blinked. It was a small blink, the kind that means someone is recalculating. Then she recovered. "I think you're confused. The board reviewed the property records before we allocated funds for the renovation. Everything is in order." I looked past her at the pickleball players. 6 of them now, warming up with dink shots at the kitchen line. They were laughing. They were having a wonderful time. They had no idea they were standing on private land. "I'd like to see those records," I said. "Of course," Patricia said. "I'll have the management office send you the relevant documents. In the meantime, the court is open for community use. We're selling founding memberships for $200 per household. It includes a reserved court time and a club visor." She said this like she was offering me a gift. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I took a picture of the cut lock, the banner, the painted lines, and Patricia's face while she was still smiling. Then I walked back to my house and opened the fireproof box where my father had kept every piece of paper that mattered. The lease was exactly where he left it. Before I explain what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. I always like to know who's out there listening to these stories, because every time I think my neighborhood is uniquely ridiculous, someone in the comments proves me wrong. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 52 years old, and I've lived on this property for 43 of those years. My father bought the land in 1979, back when Fairview was still unincorporated county territory, and the only thing out here was pine trees, red clay, and a 2-lane road that flooded every spring. He built our house himself, framed it, wired it, plumbed it, and when he was done, he built the tennis court. Not because he was a tennis player, because my mother was. She had played in college. Nothing professional, but good enough that she missed it after they moved out here. So my father spent 18 months grading the land, laying the clay, installing the drainage, and building a fence around a regulation-size court with a view of the tree line. He gave it to her on their 15th wedding anniversary. I was 9 years old, and I remember her crying when she saw it. She taught me to play on that court every Saturday morning for years. We would walk out there with a basket of balls and she would drill me on footwork until my legs burned. She died in 2003. Pancreatic cancer, 6 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. My father never played on the court again after she passed, but he maintained it. He watered the clay, he rolled the lines, he kept the fence painted and the net tight. He said it was his way of keeping her close. When he died in 2016, the court became mine. The house, the 5 acres, the old clay court, and everything my parents had built together. I kept it up for the first few years. Then work got busy, life got complicated, and the court started to fade. The clay cracked, the net sagged, the fence rusted in places. I told myself I would restore it someday, but someday kept getting pushed back. The Fairview Sports Club had leased a small portion of the adjacent land back in 1985. They built a modest clubhouse, a parking lot, and 2 additional courts. Their property line ran right up against the eastern edge of my father's land, and over the years, people started to assume that my court was part of the club. It wasn't. It never had been. The club had a recorded lease for their parcel, and my father had a recorded deed for his. The boundary was clear on paper, even if it blurred in people's minds. The club struggled financially for years. Membership declined. The building needed repairs they couldn't afford. In 2017, they stopped paying their lease. The property owner at the time, a holding company based out of Charlotte, let the lease lapse rather than fight about it. The clubhouse sat empty. The parking lot cracked. The whole place went quiet. Then the HOA got involved. Fairview Estates had incorporated as a homeowners association in 2008, absorbing most of the surrounding neighborhood. They had a board, covenants, assessments, and an appetite for control that grew every year. When the sports club property went dormant, the HOA saw an opportunity. They negotiated with the holding company, acquired the old clubhouse parcel, and announced plans to create a community recreation campus. That was 2 years ago. I had watched the announcement with mild interest and no concern. The club parcel was separate from mine. The HOA could do whatever they wanted with their own land. Except apparently, they had decided that their own land included my tennis court. The morning after the pickleball invasion, I drove to the county recorder's office. It's a low brick building on the edge of town with fluorescent lights that hum and a smell of old paper and toner. I've been there enough times over the years to know the clerks by name. Margaret, the senior records clerk, has worked there since before I was born. She remembers my father. "Daniel," she said when I walked in, "you've got that look." "What look?" "The look your daddy used to get when someone tried to tell him his fence was on their property." I laid out the situation while she pulled the records. My father's deed, the parcel map, the old sports club lease, the HOA's acquisition documents. Margaret worked in silence for about 20 minutes, her glasses perched on the end of her nose, her fingers moving through files with the precision of someone who has done this for 40 years. Then she stopped. "Well," she said, "that's interesting." "What's interesting?" "The lease." She turned the document toward me. The Fairview Sports Club lease was for a term of 30 years, beginning June 1st, 1985, and ending May 31st, 2015. It included a 5-year renewal option, which they exercised in 2010, extending the term to May 31st, 2020. After that, the lease expired. There was no further renewal recorded. So the club's rights ended in 2020. Correct. And here's the important part. She pointed to a paragraph near the bottom of the page. The lease explicitly states that upon expiration, all improvements made by the lessee revert to the lessees, that's the holding company, unless otherwise negotiated. But your father's court was never part of the leased parcel. It was always on his deeded land. The lease doesn't mention it. The club's insurance documents don't mention it. The HOA's acquisition doesn't mention it. So the HOA never acquired my court. The HOA never had any legal connection to your court at all, Margaret said. They bought the old club parcel. That's it. Your court is on your land, and it always has been. I asked her to make me certified copies of everything. The deed, the parcel map, the lease expiration, the HOA's acquisition record. She stamped each page with the county seal and slid them into a large yellow envelope. "That'll be $42, she said. "Best $42 I've ever spent." I drove home with the envelope on the passenger seat and a quiet, steady calm settling into my chest. I had the truth. Now I needed to understand what the HOA thought they had. The next escalation came 3 days later, in the form of a certified letter. It arrived in a crisp white envelope with the HOA's logo in the corner. Inside was a letter from the Fairview Estates Board of Directors, signed by Patricia Calloway as president, informing me that the board had voted to assess all residents a special recreation improvement assessment of $850 per household to fund the renovation and ongoing maintenance of the Fairview Estates Pickleball and Recreation Campus. The letter included a breakdown of costs: court resurfacing, line painting, net installation, landscaping, signage, and administrative oversight. It also mentioned that the assessment had been approved by a 4-1 board vote and was due within 60 days. At the bottom of the letter, there was a note: residents who purchase a founding membership before the assessment deadline will receive a $100 credit toward their assessment balance. I read the letter twice. Then I read it a third time. The HOA was not just using my court. They were charging the entire neighborhood for the privilege of using my court. They were collecting money for land they did not own, improvements they had no right to make, and a recreation campus that existed only because Patricia Calloway had cut my lock and painted lines on my clay. I placed the letter in the yellow envelope with the county records and started a new folder on my computer. I labeled it Fairview HOA, Recreation Assessment. The first document I added was a screenshot of the HOA's website, where they had posted a photo gallery of the newly renovated pickleball courts. The photos showed smiling residents in their lime green visors, paddles raised, standing on my clay. The caption read, "Thanks to the vision of President Patricia Calloway, Fairview Estates now offers premier pickleball facilities for our community." The second document was a copy of the membership registration form, which I downloaded from the HOA portal. It listed the benefits: reserved court times, access to exclusive member events, a club visor, and voting rights in club governance. The form required a signature, a check for $200, and an acknowledgement that membership fees are non-refundable. The third document was a series of emails I obtained later, but I'll get to those. I did not respond to the assessment letter immediately. I did not call Patricia. I did not attend the next board meeting. I waited, I watched, I documented. People like Patricia Calloway mistake silence for fear. Mine was preparation. Over the next 2 weeks, the pickleball club exploded. Patricia had marketed it aggressively. Flyers in every mailbox, posts on the neighborhood Facebook group, announcements at the community pool. She had recruited a founding board of 5 residents who helped sell memberships and organize events. She had scheduled a grand opening tournament for the 3rd Saturday of September, with brackets, prizes, and a catered lunch. I learned all of this from my neighbor, Elaine Rossetti. Elaine is 74 years old, a retired high school English teacher, and the only person on our street who still brings me homemade lasagna when I've been working late. She's also the only person who knocked on my door to ask if I was okay after the pickleball lines appeared. "I told Patricia that court was yours," Elaine said, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea. "I told her I remembered your mother playing there. She said I was mistaken. She said the court had always been part of the club." "She's wrong," I said. "I know she's wrong. I watched your father build that court. I brought him lemonade while he was grating the clay." Elaine shook her head. "But people believe her, Daniel. She's very convincing. And the pickleball crowd, they're enthusiastic. They don't want to hear that their new hobby is built on a mistake." "It's not a mistake," I said. "It's trespassing." Elaine gave me a long look. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let her finish," I said. "She's doing a very thorough job of creating evidence." The next piece of evidence arrived on a Thursday afternoon in the form of a contractor's invoice. I was walking the property line, checking the fence posts along the eastern boundary, when a white pickup truck pulled into the old club parking lot. The logo on the door read, "Piedmont Court Surfaces, Commercial and Residential." A man in a dusty baseball cap climbed out and started unloading equipment. I walked over. "Can I help you?" "Here to do the court resurfacing," he said. "The clay court behind the clubhouse. Got a work order from the HOA." "That court is on private property," I said. He looked at his clipboard. "Says here it's part of the Fairview Recreation Campus. I've got a signed contract with the HOA board. Can I see that?" He hesitated, then handed me the clipboard. The contract was between Piedmont Court Surfaces and the Fairview Estates Homeowners Association, signed by Patricia Calloway. The scope of work included full clay court restoration, line painting for dual tennis pickleball use, net post replacement, and perimeter landscaping. The total contract amount was $22,400. I took a picture of every page with my phone. Then I handed the clipboard back. I'd hold off on any work until you confirm the property boundaries, I said. The HOA doesn't own this court. The contractor looked uncomfortable. Look, I'm just doing a job. If there's a dispute, you need to take it up with the HOA. I will, I said. But if you start work on private property without the owner's consent, you're liable for trespass and damages. That's not my opinion. That's the law. He didn't start work that day. He made some phone calls, packed up his equipment, and drove away. But the invoice, the $22,400 contract, became another page in my folder. That evening, I called my attorney. Her name is Rebecca Chen, and she specializes in real estate litigation. She's 41, sharp as a tack, and has the kind of calm, measured voice that makes opposing counsel nervous. I've worked with her before, on a boundary dispute with a neighboring farm, and she's never lost a case that involved a recorded document. I explained the situation. The court, the pickleball club, the assessment, the contractor, the lease. Send me everything, she said. The deed, the parcel map, the lease, the HOA's acquisition records, the assessment letter, the membership forms, and the contractor invoice. I want to see the full picture. I'll send it tonight. And Daniel? Don't confront her directly. Don't threaten legal action. Don't post anything on social media. Let her keep talking. Let her keep writing things down. The more she commits to this story, the harder it will be for her to walk it back. That's exactly what I've been doing. Good. I'll call you after I review the documents. Rebecca called back 2 days later. Her voice had that particular tone she gets when she's found something that makes her almost smile. The lease is ironclad, she said. It expired in 2020. The club's rights terminated. The HOA acquired the club parcel in 2022, but the lease had already lapsed. They bought the land from the holding company, but the holding company never owned your court. Your court was never part of the leased parcel. It was never part of the club. It was never part of the HOA acquisition. So they have no claim. They have less than no claim. They've been collecting money from residents for access to property they don't own. They've signed a $22,400 contract for improvements on property they don't own. They've assessed every household in the neighborhood for maintenance of property they don't own. This isn't just a boundary dispute. This is fraud. What's our next step? I'm drafting a demand letter. It will outline the property records, the lease expiration, and the HOA's unauthorized use. It will demand that they cease all activities on your court, remove all improvements, refund all membership fees and assessments related to the court, and provide a full accounting of all funds collected. And if they refuse, then we file a complaint in Superior Court for trespass, conversion, and fraud. We'll also name Patricia Calloway individually, since she signed the contractor agreement and authorized the assessment. When do we send the letter? I'll have it ready by Friday, but Daniel, there's something else you should know. What? I pulled the HOA's financial statements. They're public record. The special assessment has already generated over $40,000 from residents. The membership fees have brought in another $12,000. That money is sitting in the HOA's recreation fund. If this goes to court, the HOA is going to have to explain where that money came from and what they spent it on. And they spent it on my court. They spent it on a court they don't own, based on a lease that expired before they ever acquired the property. That's not just embarrassing. That's actionable. The demand letter arrived at the HOA management office on a Monday morning, delivered by certified mail with return receipt requested. I know this because the office manager, a woman named Gloria who had always been decent to me, called me that afternoon. "Daniel, what is this?" she asked. Her voice was shaky. Patricia is in her office, screaming at the board attorney. "It's a demand letter," I said. "It explains that the tennis court is my private property and the HOA has no right to use it." But Patricia said the board reviewed everything. She said the court was part of the club acquisition. Patricia was wrong. The lease expired. The court reverted to my family's parcel. The HOA never owned it. There was a long pause. "Oh my God," Gloria whispered. "We've already spent $18,000 on the renovation." "Then you've got a problem," I said. "But it's not my problem. It's Patricia's." The board meeting that month was held in the community clubhouse, a modest building with folding chairs, a projector screen, and the faint smell of chlorine from the pool next door. I had never attended a board meeting before. I had never needed to. That night, the room was packed. Word had spread. The demand letter had been leaked. I still don't know by whom. And residents were angry, confused, and scared. They had paid assessments. They had bought memberships. They had scheduled their pickleball games and invited their friends and bought new paddles. And now they were hearing that the whole thing might be built on a lie. Patricia Calloway stood at the front of the room behind a podium, flanked by the other 4 board members. Her husband, Roger, was sitting in the front row with his pickleball paddle across his lap. He played every morning at 7 a.m., and he was one of the club's most vocal supporters. Patricia looked composed, but I could see the tension in her jaw. She had prepared a statement. "I want to address the recent allegations regarding the recreation campus," she began. "The board has reviewed the property records thoroughly, and we are confident that the tennis court is part of the Fairview Sports Club parcel acquired by the HOA in 2022. The demand letter we received is based on a misunderstanding of the lease terms, and our attorney is preparing a response." A man in the third row raised his hand. "Did we, or did we not buy the court?" "The court was included in the acquisition," Patricia said. "Then why does the county record show it on a different parcel?" Patricia's smile flickered. "I'm not aware of any county record that contradicts our documentation." I stood up. The room went quiet. I could feel every pair of eyes on me as I walked to the front, carrying the yellow envelope from the county recorder's office. "I have the county records right here," I said. "Certified copies. The deed to my property, recorded in 1979. The parcel map showing the court on my land. The Fairview Sports Club lease, which expired in 2020. And the HOA's acquisition documents, which show you bought the club parcel in 2022, 2 years after the lease expired." I placed the envelope on the podium. "The court was never part of the club parcel. It was never part of the lease. It was never part of the HOA acquisition. You've been using private property without permission, charging residents for access to land you don't own, and spending association funds on improvements you had no right to make." Patricia's face had gone pale. "That's not—" "The documents are right here," I said. "Anyone can look at them. The county seal is on every page." The board treasurer, a nervous man named Howard Kemp, reached for the envelope. He pulled out the lease and read it slowly, his lips moving. When he got to the expiration date, he made a small sound, something between a sigh and a groan. "Patricia," he said quietly, "this lease expired in 2020. "That can't be right," Patricia said. "The club was operating until—" "The club stopped paying rent in 2017, I said. "The lease lapsed. The holding company let it expire. When you bought the parcel in 2022, you bought the land, but you didn't buy my court. You never had any rights to it." Roger Calloway stood up. "This is ridiculous. We've been playing on that court for months. Nobody said anything." "I said something the first morning," I replied. "Patricia told me I was confused. You should have filed a complaint with the board." I filed a demand letter with my attorney. That's a complaint. The room erupted. Residents were shouting questions, demanding refunds, asking who had authorized the assessment. Howard Kemp was frantically scrolling through his laptop, pulling up financial records. One of the other board members, a woman named Sheila who had always seemed reasonable, was staring at Patricia with an expression of pure disbelief. "Did you know?" Sheila asked. "Did you know the lease was expired?" "Of course not," Patricia said. "I reviewed the documents the management company provided. They said the court was included." "Who at the management company?" "I don't remember. It was 2 years ago." "You don't remember who told you we owned a tennis court?" Patricia didn't answer. That was the moment the midpoint reversal hit. Not for me. I already knew the truth. But for everyone else in that room, the story had just changed. This wasn't a dispute between a difficult homeowner and a well-meaning board. This was a board president who had made a massive, costly mistake and was now trying to deflect blame. And the residents were starting to realize they had been charged for it. Howard Kemp cleared his throat. "I need to say something." He turned his laptop around so the room could see the screen. "The special assessment has generated $43,750 so far. The membership fees total $12,400. We've spent $18,200 on court renovation, $3,100 on equipment, and $2,800 on marketing and events. That's $24,100 spent on a court we don't own." "We do own it," Patricia insisted. "The county record says otherwise," Howard said. I'm looking at it right now. The parcel number on the lease doesn't match the parcel number on Mr. Mercer's deed. They're different properties. They've always been different properties. Patricia's husband turned to look at her. You told me the board verified everything. We did, Patricia said. We verified what we had. You verified the wrong parcel, I said. You assumed the court was part of the club because it was next to the club. You never checked the actual property lines. Patricia's face hardened. This is a good faith mistake. The board acted on the information we had. We'll resolve this. How? Someone shouted from the back. By refunding our money? The membership fees are non-refundable, Patricia said automatically. The room got louder. I let it happen. I stood by the podium with my yellow envelope and watched Patricia Calloway try to hold back a tide of angry residents who had just learned they had paid hundreds of dollars for access to land that belonged to me. The meeting ended without a resolution. Patricia promised to investigate and report back. The board voted to suspend the pickleball club activities pending a legal review. Residents filed out of the clubhouse in clusters, their voices low and tense. Elaine found me in the parking lot. That was something, she said. That was just the beginning. What happens now? Now we wait for the HOA's attorney to respond to my demand letter, and we see if Patricia is smart enough to settle or arrogant enough to fight. She was arrogant enough to fight. The HOA's attorney sent a response letter 10 days later. It was 6 pages of legal posturing, arguing that the court had been adversely possessed by the sports club for decades, that the HOA had reasonably relied on representations from the management company, and that my claim was barred by lashes because I had waited too long to assert my rights. Rebecca read the letter and laughed out loud. Adverse possession requires open, notorious, hostile use for 20 years, she said. The club had a lease. A lease is permissive, not hostile. You can't adversely possess something you're renting. And laches doesn't apply because the HOA only started using the court 6 months ago. This letter is a bluff. So what do? We file the complaint, and we add a count for abuse of process, since they're clearly trying to intimidate you with baseless legal arguments. The complaint was filed on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the story had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Someone had obtained a copy of the complaint from the court's online docket and posted it to the neighborhood Facebook group. The comments were brutal. She charged us $850 for a court she didn't own? I want my membership fee back. Who's going to pay for the assessment refund? Patricia needs to resign. Patricia did not resign. Instead, she doubled down. She sent an email blast to all residents, defending her actions and accusing me of holding the community hostage over a technicality. She claimed the court had been functionally part of the club for 30 years, and that my lawsuit was frivolous and selfish. That email became another page in my folder. The late story surprise came from an unexpected source. His name was Walter Dunn, and he was the former manager of the Fairview Sports Club. He had retired in 2016 and moved to Florida, but someone in the neighborhood had tracked him down and asked him about the court. He called me on a Wednesday evening, his voice crackling over a bad cell connection. Mr. Mercer, this is Walt Dunn. I managed the Fairview Club from 1990 to 2016. I remember you, I said. You used to wave at my father when he was working on the court. Your father was a good man. He let us use his parking overflow during tournaments. Never asked for a dime. I know. Listen, I heard about what's happening with the HOA, and I wanted to tell you something. The club never claimed your father's court. We knew it was private. We told every new member. We put it in the orientation materials. The court behind the clubhouse is private property. Do not use without permission. It was in the handbook. Do you still have a copy of that handbook? I've got boxes of old club records in my garage. Handbooks, newsletters, board minutes. I can send you whatever you need. I need that handbook, I said, and anything else that shows the club knew the court was private. I'll overnight it tomorrow. The package arrived on Friday. It contained a 1998 member handbook with a clear disclaimer on page 12. The clay court adjacent to the east parking lot is private property owned by the Mercer family. Members are not permitted to use this court without express permission from the owners. It also contained board minutes from 2005, where the club had discussed approaching my father about purchasing the court. The minutes noted, "The Mercer court is not part of the club's leased parcel. Any acquisition would require a separate negotiation with the owner. And it contained a letter from the club's insurance company in 2010, explicitly excluding the Mercer Court from the club's liability coverage because it was not owned or leased by the insured. 3 documents, 3 different sources, all confirming the same thing. The club knew the court was private. The club had always known, which meant Patricia Calloway's claim that the court had been functionally part of the club for 30 years was not just wrong, it was contradicted by the club's own records. I sent everything to Rebecca. She added it to the complaint as supplemental evidence and sent a copy to the HOA's attorney with a brief note. Your client's adverse possession argument is now demonstrably false. We recommend settlement. The grand opening tournament was scheduled for the 3rd Saturday of September. Patricia had refused to cancel it. Despite the lawsuit, despite the board's suspension of club activities, despite the growing anger from residents, she had insisted that the tournament would go forward. She posted on Facebook that the legal dispute was being resolved, and that the event would be a celebration of community spirit. I don't know if she believed that or if she was just incapable of admitting defeat. Either way, she was about to learn that community spirit doesn't survive a $43,000 fraud. The morning of the tournament was clear and warm, the kind of September day that makes you forget summer is ending. I woke up at 5:30, made coffee, and walked out to the court. The banner was still hanging. The portable nets were set up. The folding chairs were arranged in neat rows. Someone had put out a table with registration forms and a cash box. Patricia was already there, wearing her lime green visor and a crisp white polo, directing volunteers like a general before a battle. She saw me and stiffened. The tournament is a private event, she said. You're not welcome. This is my property, I said. You're not welcome. The board hasn't ruled on your claim. The board doesn't need to rule. The county already recorded the truth. You're standing on private land. Players were starting to arrive. They parked in the old club lot and walked toward the court with their paddles and water bottles, laughing and chatting. They didn't know what was about to happen. At 7:30, a car pulled into my driveway. It was a silver sedan with Florida plates. Walter Dunn stepped out, wearing a golf shirt and khakis, holding a manila folder. I figured I should be here in person, he said. Seemed important. It is, I said. Thank you. At 7:45, Rebecca arrived. She was carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression she gets before a deposition. Calm, focused, and slightly predatory. The HOA's attorney called me last night, she said. They want to discuss settlement. What did you tell them? I told them we'd talk after the tournament. At 8 o'clock, the tournament was supposed to start. About 40 people had gathered around the court. Players, spectators, volunteers. Patricia was at the net with a microphone, preparing to give her opening remarks. I walked to the center of the court. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Before this tournament begins, there's something you need to know. Patricia grabbed my arm. You can't do this. I pulled my arm free. This is my property. I can do whatever I want. I turned to the crowd. My name is Daniel Mercer. This tennis court has been in my family since 1979. My father built it for my mother. I grew up on this clay. And contrary to what Patricia Calloway has told you, this court has never been owned by the Fairview Sports Club or the Fairview Estates HOA. I held up the yellow envelope. I have certified county records that prove it. The deed, the parcel map, the expired lease, the HOA's own acquisition documents. This court is on my land, and it always has been. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. But don't take my word for it, I said. This is Walter Dunn. He managed the Fairview Sports Club for 26 years. Walt, can you tell these people what the club knew about this court? Walter stepped forward. He looked uncomfortable but resolute. The club never owned this court, he said. We knew it was private. We told every member. It was in the handbook. We even talked about buying it once, but we never did. The Mercer family has always owned it. Patricia's face had gone white. That's not true. The management company told us. The management company was wrong, Walter said. Or someone misread the documents. Either way, this court was never part of the club. A woman in the front row raised her hand. So, we paid $200 for a membership to a court the HOA doesn't own? Yes, I said. And you paid an $850 assessment for renovations on private property. The HOA has collected over $56,000 from this neighborhood based on a lie. The crowd erupted. People were shouting at Patricia, demanding refunds, asking how this could have happened. Roger Calloway was staring at his wife with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger, disbelief, maybe both. Patricia grabbed the microphone. "This is a misunderstanding. The board will resolve it. We'll issue refunds if necessary." "If necessary?" a man shouted. "We paid for something that doesn't exist." "The court exists," Patricia said. "The question is who owns it." "The question has been answered," I said. "I own it. The county says so. The club's own records say so. The only person who disagrees is you." Howard Kemp, the treasurer, stood up from his chair. He had been sitting quietly at the registration table, staring at his laptop. Now he looked like a man who had just made a decision. "I'm resigning from the board," he said. "Effective immediately. I can't be part of this." "Howard," Patricia started, "you told us the court was included in the acquisition. You showed us a map, but the map didn't have parcel numbers. I should have checked. I didn't. That's on me. But you're the one who pushed this through. You're the one who signed the contractor agreement. You're the one who set the assessment amount. This is your mess." He walked away from the table and didn't look back. The tournament was canceled. There was no formal announcement. The crowd simply dissolved. Players drifting back to their cars. Volunteers packing up the registration table. The cash box disappearing into someone's trunk. Patricia stood alone at the net, her microphone dangling from her hand, her lime green visor suddenly looking ridiculous in the morning sun. I walked over to her. "You should call your attorney," I said. "You're going to need one." "This isn't over," she said. "It's been over since the day you cut my lock. You just didn't know it yet." The aftermath unfolded over the next several weeks. The HOA's attorney contacted Rebecca the following Monday to discuss settlement. The board, minus Howard Kemp and minus Patricia, who had been suspended pending an internal investigation, voted to accept my terms. They agreed to cease all use of the court, remove all improvements at their expense, refund all membership fees and the special assessment to every resident, and pay my legal costs. The total cost to the HOA was just under $70,000. Patricia Calloway resigned from the board 2 weeks later. She posted a statement on the neighborhood Facebook group, blaming the management company for providing incomplete records and insisting she had acted in good faith. The comments were not kind. Roger Calloway stopped playing pickleball. I saw him a few times after that, walking his dog in the mornings, and he never looked at me. I don't know if he was embarrassed or angry or just tired. I didn't ask. The Piedmont Court Surfaces crew came back in October, but this time they were removing the pickleball lines, not painting them. They stripped the acrylic, resurfaced the clay, and restored the court to its original condition. The HOA paid for all of it. Elaine brought me lasagna the day the work was finished. We sat on my porch and looked at the court, clean and quiet in the autumn light. "Your mother would be proud," she said. "I hope so. What are you going to do with it now?" I thought about it for a moment. "I'm going to play on it," I said. Every Saturday morning, just like she taught me. The first Saturday after the restoration, I walked out to the court at 7 a.m. with a basket of balls and my father's old racket. The clay was smooth and dark, still damp from the morning dew. The net was tight. The lines were crisp and white. I stood at the baseline and bounced a ball against the clay. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound was exactly right. That soft, rhythmic thump I had been hearing in my memory for years. I tossed the ball into the air and hit my first serve. It landed in. I played for an hour, drilling myself on footwork until my legs burned. When I was done, I sat on the bench my father had built and looked out at the tree line. The pine trees were still there. The morning light was still golden. The court was still mine. I put the racket back in the shed, closed the gate, and hung a new padlock on the chain. This one had a combination only I knew. The yellow envelope from the county recorder's office went back into the fireproof box, right next to my father's deed and my mother's old tennis trophies. I closed the lid and turned the key. Some things are worth protecting, some things are worth waiting for, and some battles are won not by the loudest voice in the room, but by the quietest document in the file. Patricia Calloway learned that the hard way. I just wish she hadn't cut my lock to figure it out.